How you doing? I hope you're safe and well wherever you are. I can hardly believe we're actually on to the penultimate chapter of Breadboy already. So this evening I'm going to be reading chapter 17. And believe it or not, tomorrow night, as it so happens is Friday night, works out very well, is the final chapter. So I hope you enjoy this chapter from Breadboy. I should say that all the previous readings from Paperboy are now being uploaded on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Paperboy Belfast. So if you subscribe to that, you can watch all those. And also, I'll be uploading all the readings from Breadboy as well. So if you missed any chapters, or if you're glutton for punishment, and you want to hear it again, then you can follow that on my YouTube channel. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this evening's reading. It's called Mr. BRA. I jumped out of the Ormo mini shop with all the purposefulness of the bionic man jumping off a skyscraper to catch an evil Russian spy with a moustache and a nuclear bomb in his briefcase. This was the Saturday of the Belfast Schools Charity Fair and the final of Mr. Belfast Grammar School. It was vital that Mr. BRA arrive in good time to ensure the maximum number of votes. I admit I rushed my bread delivery duties that morning. I even avoided the usual conversation about the weather with Miss Adams. "Gives rain, young man," she said politely. "Aye, see ya," I said hurriedly. I even cut short my weekly visit with Naomi, even though she was very excitedly pointing to her recent birthday present of a Grease cassette. I left her house after only 3 wines of Sandy. When Leslie began to tell me all the latest news about the security situation and Mrs. Piper still having a fancy man from a gospel hall up in Newton Arch Road and her good living and all, I resisted the temptation to ask any supplementary questions for fear of lengthening my working hours unnecessarily. I came across the McLarnon twins from my Sunday school class in the estate that morning. At first, I was delighted to see them playing on the green in front of Big Duff's Community Centre, singing "Give Me Oil in My Lamp," a gospel song I had taught them in Sunday school. It was only as I drew closer that I noticed they had adapted the lyrics. "Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray. Give me bullets in my gun, and I'll shoot them every one, 'cause they're members of the IRA. I had neither the time or the energy to begin to challenge this blasphemy, today of all days, and I began to wonder if I was the least successful Sunday school teacher ever to have attempted to teach their charges to love their enemies. I knew that Jesus had said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me," but it seemed like the little children in my Sunday school class just wanted to make me suffer. As I departed the scene, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Billy Cooper's granny with the curlers. "A pan, a plane, 2 soda and 2 potato." When I arrived back into our house, my whole family was gathered around the television with a sense of excitement. My father had just bought Pong for the Westie Disco, and everyone was having a go. Pong was tennis on your TV. I watched in amazement as my big and wee brothers applied their customary ball skills to move a wee line up and down the sides of the TV screen. They were using buttons on a computer thingy my father had plugged into the back of the TV. Daddy looked awestruck at this advanced technology in our living room. He even stopped smoking for a few minutes to have a go, stubbing out his Hamlet cigar in the new tortoiseshell ashtray my wee brother had given him. My wee brother had dug up the remains of Steve Austin from the pet cemetery under the holly tree at the bottom of the back garden on Father's Day, which was a girlish but practical use of my dearly departed pet. This new technology was mind-boggling. If your wee line hit the ball, it flew across the screen like in tennis, and you won points like Bjorn Borg at Wimbledon. It looked like real tennis, but when my big brother eventually let me have a go, I found it far too fast. I preferred to play Space Invaders in the amusement arcade in Newcastle on the Sunday school excursion. Space Invaders was very fast and complicated too, but it required no sporting ability and was a useful preparation for any possible alien invasion. It was good to see my family so happy while playing games on this modern marvel in our living room. Mummy even had a few goes and she laughed when Daddy said that Virginia Wade had nothing to worry about. Ever since the shooting next door, she didn't laugh as much, and I kept overhearing Auntie Emma asking her about her nerves and the change. Daddy had started to give off more and more about no more overtime at the foundry because the big bosses were as thick as champ, and about no hope for peace in Northern Ireland because the politicians were a shower of useless bigots. He began to bring home cans of Carlsberg Special from the wine lodge more often, and when he drank too many cans, he started to slobber. One night, my mother got so angry with my father that she threw a carton of cottage cheese at him. It missed his head and plastered the living room wall behind him. Fortunately, the texture of cottage cheese was the same as wood chip wallpaper, so nobody noticed. Henceforth, every time my mother got cross, we joked she was going to splatter us with cottage cheese. I was glad to see my parents laughing today at Pong. I wanted my family to live happily ever after, like everyone in the Waltons, except Grandpa Walton, but he was old. Amid all the excitement of playing tennis on TV, I almost forgot about my imminent attempt to become the heartthrob of Belfast grammar schools. When I reminded my father that he had promised to give me a lift into town, he sighed at the thought of a son of his participating in a beauty competition. But spurred on by the excitement of a future of TV and computers, he quickly ferried me to Inst in the Ford Escort Respray. So, we'll say hello to a few people before I continue. Hello there, Jim Poole. How you doing? Hello, Bernadette Saunders. Good evening to you too. Hi, Francis McGrath. Hello, Michael McKinley, Senior. Good to have you along. And a few other regulars here. Hi, Evelyn and Laurie and Damien in Edinburgh. Hello, Nigel. Jeremy Skillen. Hello, Norma Fleming. Lovely to have you along this evening. And Evelyn Brown. Good evening, Marlene Williamson. Hope you're well. And hi, Angela and Keith Montgomery. Good regulars. And who else? Hi, Julie McCulloch. Hope you're doing well. And Alan McLean and Chris McMahon. Hi, Susan Wilgar. You never miss. And hello, who else is here? Anne and Ian and Victor. And let me see. Hi, Robbie. Hope you're doing well there as well. Sadie says, you had that game in your house too? Pong. Oh, it was incredible. We thought that was sophisticated computer games in those days. Hello from Maureen and Jim, says Jim Layton. Good to have you. Hi, Mark McCauley, listening in today at 4 p.m. in Louisville, Kentucky. Lovely to have you along, Mark. Hope you're all doing well there. And Susan Craig, you've made it live tonight. Good for you. And hi also to who else there? Ray as well. So thanks for joining me. I'm going to continue with the story of competing as Mr. BRA. The school's charity fair was held in the Assembly Hall of Inst, which was a school near the City Hall just for boys who passed the 11 plus and played rugby. Inst was in a beautiful old Georgian building with a front lawn. It wasn't as old as BRA, but it looked more refined than our rugged granite building. The school's charity fair was held in Inst every year because it was in the city centre near the ABC cinema and all the best shops, like the athletic stores. The school was just outside the city centre security cordon, so you didn't have to queue up for ages to get frisked or have your bag searched to get into the fair. When I arrived at the hall, it was already full of nice families with clean prams going round the stalls buying homemade jam and caramel squares to help the babies in Africa. Most of the customers were pronouncing all their ings as they haggled over the price of an old plate or a crochet tea cosy. The Mr. and Miss Belfast school stalls were at the very front of the hall, beside the tombola, and I noticed that there was already a small crowd gathering. The rules of this annual beauty competition were very simple. The photograph of each finalist was pinned to the wall with a large red bucket underneath. The public was invited to vote for their favourite by throwing coins into the respective bucket, and the contestant who raised the most money for African babies was deemed the winner. Of course, most people just voted for their own school. It reminded me of politics in Northern Ireland. You just voted for your own side no matter what. Naturally, there was much more interested in Miss Belfast schools than the boys' competition, because the three finalists were lovely, so they were. However, it was hard to choose between the girls because all three were blonde and had their hair done like Purdy in the New Avengers. Miss BRA, Miss Methody, and Miss Victoria College all stood beside their buckets, smiling coyly, and occasionally casting a glance of hatred towards their rivals. Their mothers stood beside them proudly, discreetly topping up their daughters' buckets from their purses. However, Mr. Methody and Mr. Inst were nowhere to be seen. This confirmed they had been given the same advice that my big brother had given me in relation to the competition. Don't let anyone see you there, or they'll all think you're a big Beirut. I was far too embarrassed to stand beside my bucket and request money for my good looks. Quite apart from not wanting to be a fruit, I was not prepared to prostitute myself in such an undignified manner, even if it was to help the African babies. I was relieved to discover that Mr. Inst and Mr. Methody obviously shared my embarrassment. At least we were competing on an equally anonymous basis. As I approached the Mr. Belfast school stall stealthily, I saw that Joanne Galt was already standing beside my photograph, loyally encouraging people to vote for me, although I think she was probably more interested in feeding the wee orphans than helping me. But when I looked at my photograph, I was shocked at the specimen on display. This was the first time I had seen my picture since it had been taken by one of the skinny boys with glasses in the BRA photography club. It was horrible. In the photograph, I had a very large head, like when I looked in the funny mirrors at Barry's Amusement Arcade in Bangor. Had something gone seriously wrong in the darkroom in BRA? Or was I really this ugly? The image made me think of the new movie coming out soon about a person with a deformed head they called the Elephant Man. My main preoccupation before the photo was taken was my skin, so I'd covered up the blemishes with my mother's talcum powder, but I'd not even considered the possibility that I had a misshapen head. Who in their right mind would donate money for this monster? I thanked my lucky stars that my big brother had refused to attend the charity fair, as I was certain that if he saw this picture, he would start to call me the Elephant Man, and I would be completely squandered. When I looked more closely at the competition, I was even more depressed. Both Mr. Methody and Mr. Inst had blonde hair and blue eyes and normal heads. Mr. Methody looked like Blue out of the High Chaparral, and all the girls loved him. Mr. Inst looked so like Luke Skywalker from Star Wars that I almost wanted to vote for him myself. I could soon see that more coins were being dropped into their buckets than in mine, in spite of Joanne Galt's valiant efforts. But he's going to be lovely when he grows up a bit, she pleaded with one potential voter who could not be dissuaded from donating 10p to Luke Skywalker. Just as I was about to slip out quietly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. "What happened to your head, Mr. BRA?" asked Titch McCracken. Even though he didn't go to my school, or any grammar school, or any school at all much, Titch had come to support me. He stood out in the Inst Assembly Hall because he was the only person wearing a UVF badge in the lapel of his faux leather jacket from John Fraser's. He was accompanied by Heather Mateer, who had long since abandoned any school, and she was on fighting form. "Are them wee lads in the footy club taking the piss out of you, wee lad?" she inquired sympathetically. Before I could even attempt to mount a defence of my deformities, I noticed Titch approaching Mr. Methody's bucket and placing his hand inside. I was about to challenge this apparent disloyalty when he immediately moved the same hand over my bucket, and I heard a clatter of coins. He repeated the offence several times, and no one seemed to notice. With each act of theft, He lifted a larger handful of coins from my rival's buckets and deposited them in mine. I never thought the day would come when I would appreciate Titch's exceptional talent for shoplifting, and I was unsure whether or not to take him to task about this flagrant theft. Finally, I made a moral choice, and I spoke directly to Titch. Do it again, will you? These were desperate times, so I permitted myself to become the chief beneficiary of Titch's predilection for theft. I satisfied myself with the justification that all the money was going to help the wee orphans in Africa, no matter whose bucket it was in. Eventually, Titch had to cease operations when Heather noticed that Miss Methody's mommy was starting to look at him very suspiciously over the rim of her swanky tortoiseshell glasses. Good timing, as who should swagger up to us but Timothy Longsley? He was here with his mother, who was talking animatedly about antiques in her fur coat at the crockery stall. How's your split lip, Jippo? He asked, with enough smarm to make me want to boke. Before I could think up a suitably clever put-down in response, my Westy Disco friends intervened. What's your problem, wee lad? Asked Heather. This was going to be interesting. Heather versus Timothy was like Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. Aye, who are you looking at? Asked Titch. Well, I can't quite tell what it is, said Timothy, but it's rather small and scruffy, and it's certainly looking back. Here, wee lad, intervened Heather. Why don't you go and take a long walk off a short pier? Oh, the Shankle Millie can speak, replied Timothy inadvisably, but I bet she can't read. Oh, I was never more delighted by any words that Timothy had ever spoken, because I knew the likely consequences. Heather pushed Titch out of the way and administered a powerful kick to the region of Timothy's Jimmy Joe. Ow! Moaned Timothy, falling to his knees and clutching his groin. Personally, I was fully satisfied by this level of retribution, but it was not enough for Heather. She grabbed Miss Victoria College's bucket and swung it dangerously at Timothy's head. Now I was getting worried. As a pacifist, I was happy enough to see Timothy humiliated, but I didn't really want Heather to kill him. Poor Timmy ducked, but the contents of the bucket spilled out noisily all over the floor of the Inst Assembly Hall, coins bouncing and rolling in every direction, and suddenly everyone in the hall was looking straight at us. Titch ran for it, lifting a handful of sweets from the tuck shop on the way out. I later learned that he broke a tooth on one of the Highland toffee bars he had swiped, which I suppose was a just punishment under the circumstances. Within seconds, several members of the Inst glorious First 15 rugby team were carrying Heather Mateer from the building. Millie! Shouted Timothy after her through real tears. Yes, Timothy Longsley was now lying on the floor of the Inst Assembly Hall, holding his groin and crying tears of pain and humiliation in front of 200 people from every good grammar school in Belfast. It was perfect. I owed Heather Mateer a pasty supper. Meanwhile, Miss Victoria College's mother was running around the room, fussily retrieving every coin that had been cast for her daughter. I hope this will be taken into account, she kept saying, but the more she went on like this, the more I could tell she was losing the sympathy vote for her now distraught daughter. You have ruined my special day, you silly little boy, cried Miss Victoria College into Timothy's reddened face. She was crying so hard her snatters were running. I'm beautiful, she roared. This day had not turned out as expected. The beauty competitions were hurriedly completed to avoid any further incident. The Miss Belfast Schools competition was judged a draw in case of legal action when it emerged that Miss Victoria College's uncle was a lawyer. As for me, Mr. BRA came third, behind Blue Boy and Luke Skywalker. This was typical because I never seemed to win anything. My disappointment was assuaged only by the vision of Timothy Longsley being decked by a girl in public. As I left the school's charity fair that Saturday afternoon, I wondered if I would ever win anything in my life. I wanted to win first prize in something, like Mairead Corrigan and Betty Williams did for peace. I dreamed of being a winner, like those boys from Argentina in the World Cup. It wasn't fair. Why did people in this city always look down on you just because of where you came from? I was always too poor, or too snobby, or too Protestant, or too good living. What was wrong with being a wee good living Protestant pacifist bread boy from up the Shankill? When I went on like this at home, my father told me not to have such a chip on my shoulder, but I didn't care. If I wanted to feel sorry for myself, then I would. Maybe I should do what our headmaster always suggested and plan to leave Northern Ireland. Maybe I should just leave this place for good and go and live in Sweden like ABBA, where they accepted everyone in fur coats in the snow. But just as I was leaving the front gates of Inst with my head held low, Joanne Galt caught up with me. "Cheer up, Tony," she said, with a gentle pat on my shoulder. "Sure, Judy Carton was here, and she put a 50p piece in your bucket instead of having 5 goes on the lucky dip. You missed it with the fight and all." I slowly lifted my head and smiled. I had never been more flattered in my life, so I hadn't. So there you are. That's the penultimate chapter of Breadboy. I'm sure you're down to know what happens in the final chapter. You'll find out tomorrow night. So let me just say hello to a few more people. Hi, Anne Kirk. Oh yeah, that's a cool wee that's a cool wee gift. Yes. Thank you for being supportive, says Edwin Isaba. I'm thinking Uganda. Thanks, Edwin. Hope you're all staying well there during lockdown. Hi, thanks. Doing a good job, Tony, says Anne Kirk. Thank you. Hello to some of the others who I see, Warren and David and Norma and the lovely Leslie and Neve. And thank you. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'll be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock UK time for the final installment of Breadboy. Until then, stay home, stay well, and stay positive.